Hello and welcome to the Recipes for Success podcast. I'm your host and the CEO here at Zupa, Ollie Brand. Now here we are, we're on our 5th episode and I've got a fantastic guest for you today, none other than Kieron Bailey, or also known as Kieron the Boy Bailey. Now Kieron is a fascinating guy. He originally worked as an operator in the sector, working at companies like Wagamama, Hard Rock Cafe and Costa. And since then he's gone over to the dark side. Just kidding, not the dark side. But he's actually gone into more focusing on the event space through his company EP05 that he founded. He's also recently bought a company called Otolo, which is focused around connecting mentors and mentees in the sector. And he's a general public speaker and host on many panels under the name Kieron the Boy Bailey. But a fascinating guy, and we talk much around community, around culture, and around the mentorship that's needed within the hospitality sector. So we have a fantastic discussion for you. Sit back, relax and enjoy. Kieron, thank you for coming down. It's fantastic to have you here. So I think the best thing to do, or what I'd like to do, is kick off by just getting a bit around who you are and your background in hospitality.
So, my name is Kieron Bailey, as you so lovely said. Background in hospitality, it's long, is the answer. Started off when I was 14 as a KP in a local pub. Really kind of connected with hospitality when I did my work experience at school and did a little kind of week's work in a little coffee shop in Newark where I grew up. It was a lovely little place. Felt lovely. So I got a job there over the summer. And within 2 weeks, pretty much everybody else who worked there when I was on work experience had left. And I was trying to work out, is that a reflection on me? What's the deal? It was not just a reflection on me. It was probably a little bit of me in there. But the guy who owned it was a little bit random. And he ended up to the point where I was this 15-year-old kid who'd spent a week there on work experience running his coffee shop during the summer months. And it was a really busy little time. And that was the moment that I fell in love with hospitality, because that was the moment that actually I realised the quiet, kind of introverted young man that I was, who really had aspirations to be a librarian and live in a quiet corner of the world and not really be engaged with anybody and everybody, to be fair, because I just wasn't built for that. I didn't feel like I was built for that. But that little moment, that summer, really triggered something. And I don't know if it was kind of being given the opportunity to take a leadership role, whether it was being given the opportunity every single day to make people smile, which we did. You know, lots of little old ladies who kind of coming in, and with the post office, the town's post office was directly opposite. So we'd get them on pension day and stuff, and they were just nice and it was lovely. And I got the chance to make them smile every day. And I thought, this is ace. What's not to love about this? So I spent sort of the 6 weeks of summer holidays working there, saved a whole load of money because I worked a lot. And at the end of the summer holidays, spent all of that money and lived my best life. And I was like, well, this is cool. This is going to enable, because I grew up in quite a tough working class, not even working class. We were, as kids, we were often called scum from the place that we grew up in. It was a tough council estate. So I grew up in a place where actually having money spare was not the standard. So hospitality gave me that opportunity really quickly to actually have that joy. So from that point, I kind of knew that was the thing for me. Didn't know where it was going to take me. I'm a man who gets easily distracted, don't always have the biggest plan. From the outside world, I often look like I've got a really good, solid plan. More often than not, I just like to say yes to things and see where it will take me. So I spent a couple of years training to be a chef at Clarendon College, realised that actually I'd got the mouth of Gordon Ramsay with the cooking skills of nothing more than a line chef, to be fair. So kind of went against that, because I realised actually that part of my personality was not the part that I really wanted to be able to flourish. So I did some work front of house, and actually that was the moment where I thought, actually, I get to do similar kind of things and similar behaviours, but there's that kind of inbuilt filter on me that kind of enhances the parts of me that I want to see grow. Rather than the angry, irritated version, it was kind of just making people smile version. I've worked with some amazing brands over the years. I spent 6 years running a live venue for Scottish Newcastle, who were one of the best pub companies out there. And that was probably one of the best times of my life. I started out running businesses with my wife. We've been together now 29 years this year. And we ran businesses together for sort of the first 6-7 years of our life. And that's where we kind of grew up as a young couple, to be fair. We grew together in that way. And I saw the very best of her. She often saw the best of me and sometimes saw the worst of me, because I can be a cretin sometimes, and certainly at that point. But Hospitality was amazing. So we did that. I spent some time working for Costa to see if I could work within a brand, because I'd spent 5 years doing exactly what I wanted when I wanted it. I changed the colour of the wall. One day I changed the music on the jukebox to whatever I wanted it to be. Costa was one of those things where I thought the world was moving into that branded environment, and I had to understand whether or not I could do that comfortably and be happy doing it, because I wasn't sure, having had that much freedom. As it turns out, actually making those brand values work for me was just one of the skills I had to develop. So understanding what was important to the brand and then making it connect to something that was important to me becomes really easy to actually say, I'm going to smash this, I'm going to deliver it. So spend some time working with those guys. Probably one of the best times of my life, moved into the Hard Rock Cafe. And it was literally like maybe 18 months, 2 years of my life. But that brand sticks with me to this day. Absolutely sticks with me today. The culture, the values, everything, it stays with me. And then from there, ran some restaurants, did 5 years with Wagamama, great brand. Just their noodles are the best thing in the world ever. But the consistency and the way that they operated was just really spoke to me. I like order when it comes to that kind of thing. I like everyone to know what they're doing, when to do it. And after that, I was made redundant probably 3 years after that for what is the second time. Hospitality is hard. It happens. And I made a decision that I was just going to sit down and make a list of the things that make me smile. And they were the things I was going to do going forward. And I'm probably 40 by this point. So I was probably having some sort of a crisis. There's no getting around it. But the crisis worked in my favour, because I actually realised that training and developing people was massive for me. Within Wagamama, when I left that business, they had about 105 restaurants. 10% of the general managers from within their restaurant brand, their chain, came from my restaurants. They're people who started with me as team members, as team leaders, and they'd developed and they'd grown, which for me was exceptional. So developing people, speaking, talking, I love to chat, and really just kind of trying new things. So I made a list, and now I stick to the list. And if it's not on the list of things that make me smile, I don't do it. So that takes me to today. In the last 4 years, I formed a business called EXP101 with, I'm going to say it and he'll be listening, but he is now my best friend, Chris Fletcher. We were talking about brotherly relationships and that connection, the way you understand beforehand. And Chris and I have that now. I know what he's going to say, when he's going to say it, and he's in the same position. So it's difficult actually for other people around us, because we have that connection, that bond. That can be quite challenging. But building EXP together, which was basically designed to deliver amazing events in really interesting places in a way that makes people smile, because we've all sat in conference rooms with beige people and beige speakers and just thinking, oh my God, when does this end? When? Well, it ends with EXP. That was the gist of it. And then that led into Otolo, because one day I sat on a stage with somebody, James Lemon, and we got chatting about kind of what I did and what I loved. And he told me about Otolo, and he said, do you want to have a chat and see if we can collaborate? And we had that phone call. And on that day, he said, do you fancy buying my business? And rarely in my life have I stuck for words, and indeed Chris. And that was one moment where the both of us simultaneously, okay, did not expect that. But then we rolled with it, because we saw this massive opportunity to do something incredible for this industry that has made both of our lives much, much better than it ever should have been. And I will speak for me. I will speak only for myself. My life should not have been the success. I should not have had the joy in it. That was not what was expected when I was a little boy growing up. The expectation was just get a job. Please get a job. Don't be a criminal. Don't take from society. Just add to society. And that was a pretty low bar. But as the youngest of six, growing up in a tough council estate, Mum did her very best for us in that way. Actually, as it turns out, I've been able to do a bit more than that. And I've been able to actually really influence and impact the industry that I absolutely adore.
That's amazing. I've got so many questions that come to mind.
There's a lot there, wasn't there?
Yeah, it's fantastic. That I mean, kicking off, was it the social aspect that made you fall in love with the front of house, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I just think the moment that we actually just got to connect with people, and you see that moment where you build rapport, and we do it really, really quickly in hospitality without even knowing it most of the time. I think if you ask most people out there on the restaurant floor, and you talk to them about that kind of ability to build rapport, they wouldn't know that they're doing it. But we do it within 60 seconds, because if we don't, then we're going to make the next 40 minutes to an hour of our own life much, much harder. So we develop that skill. And that for me was one of those moments where I could really build that connection really quickly. And I could you can see it in someone's eyes when they're with you. And that moment that they hand over the next hour of their life to you and say, you've got this now. And that's a responsibility. And that's a moment where you think, I get to do something very cool with this. And that was the thing, that even as a 15-year-old boy who just felt utterly overwhelmed at that point because everybody else had left, and I'm literally running this coffee shop by myself, that was overwhelming. But those moments when those little old ladies would come in and just sit, and then I'd be able to chat and engage with them and see that feeling. And I might have been the only person they'd spoken to that day. And that was for me as a responsibility. And that's what I love about hospitality. That's probably the thing that really connects me, is there are people who walk through our doors, there are people who walk into our buildings, that we are their connection for the day. So we get to make something cool with that. We get to do something magnificent with it. And we get to really just throw 50 pence in their meter for the day. For me, it's so important that we give something. I saw a post from a lady called Paula Harden. She was talking about someone in Costa Coffee had asked her how her day was. And I was like, cool, when was the last time anybody asked the long lady behind Costa how her day is? Because they ask us, they talk to us as guests, but I know full well myself that when I say, how's your day going? There's a moment where people are going to go, that's odd. That's weird. We get the chance to do that. And hospitality has ingrained that in me now. That actually, it's not just about me. I care about them too.
That's a great thing. And I guess, do you think that's because there's that surprise that people have if you actually ask the hospitality server how their day was? Do you think there's an underlying lack of respect for the sector in the UK? Of course there is.
It devastates me. It fills me with a level of incandescent rage, because this industry is absolutely the answer. It is the backbone of our society. And for me, it's actually a good part of the answer to the woes, because within hospitality, we engage, we care, we have empathy, we listen, we pay attention, and we put our own feelings to one side, and we do more to make sure that person, their day is better. If you could take that and then say, right, we're going to have more people in society behaving like that, what kind of a world we live in? Quite an amazing world is a simple answer. But the reality is, it annoys me so much. I've sat down with so many parents over the years who've said their kids have come and told their parents that they want to come and follow a career in hospitality, and their parents are like, no. And I'm like, bring mum and dad in, let's have a conversation about it. And you've got little Johnny who was supposed to be a lawyer. This one's supposed to be a doctor. This one's supposed to go and do a business degree. And all it takes often in life is a conversation where you talk about why they're going to do well in this and the opportunity that's presented. Because hospitality is just huge. The opportunity within it is ginormous. And if more people saw that and saw that actually it's not just about washing dishes and serving food, there's just an ecosystem around it, that all of us are in it together and that we thrive from one another. If more parents, more families could see that, then we'd get past that tut test. We'd get past that, Jesus, what do you want to do it for? It's going to be hard. Gordon Ramsay's been on telly shouting at somebody, calling them an idiot sandwich. Sorry, Gordon, I use him as an example every time because, well, he needs to do better. But the reality is we need to have better examples of why this industry shines. We need to show better examples of what this industry means and what the impact that it can have on people, and stop letting people control the narrative.
100%. I mean, the soft skills that people learn from working in the sector, any services sector, is a massive thing. It's
even
huge.
That term, though, Ollie, even that term, soft skills, it's a trigger for me. Because there's nothing soft about them. They are the hardest skills to master. They are the toughest skills to develop. And they are actually the most impactful elements of somebody's day. They are the things that will really deliver. So this idea that they're called soft skills, I'm on a mission to rebrand them. I don't know as what yet, because hard skills sounds tough, but I want them to be rebranded as something better than that. I want them to be rebranded to be say that actually these are incredibly. They create resourcefulness within us. They create connection within us. They create the ability to actually just have our words resonate with people. That is a beautiful thing. There's nothing soft about that in any way, shape or form.
Just interpersonal skills, basically.
For sure.
But hardcore interpersonal skills.
I buy that. Yeah. I'm going to start selling that as a premise. Hardcore interpersonal skills. There's a video there.
Yeah, for sure. But so something I'd love to talk about with you is we've kind of talked around it a bit, but is community. Because looking at yourself, you are an operator, and then you've now, most of the things you do, EXP101, the events, Otolo, connecting people within the sector. I mean, it's all it's around the fundamental piece of community. And yeah, what drove you towards doing that?
I think probably from my time as an operator, I would see that there's a level of fear There's a huge level of fear of connecting and sharing your ideas and your knowledge with other operators from other brands, which I find utterly bizarre, because this fear is actually, I'm going to tell you what I know and you're going to go and do it better. Well, if that's the case, then you need to do better. Or I'm going to introduce you to my people and you're going to be able to steal them away from you. No, you can't steal people. You can inspire people. So if I can inspire somebody to leave your business and come and work for mine, that's not a reflection on me. That's a reflection on you. You're not trying hard enough. It's a simple answer. Community is really key. So I think back to that first pub that I ran, the Old Angel. It was an amazing place. That was a community pub in a city centre of Nottingham. And I go back to, I think the first year we opened it, and we weren't going to open on Christmas Day, but we had lots of people who were vulnerable people, I guess, is the honest answer. And I will look to them. I remember talking to my wife at around that time and thinking, if we don't open on Christmas Day, where do those people go? What happens to them? They don't have families. I know they don't have families because I've talked to them, I've connected with them, I've listened to them. So they're just going to be sat by themselves. And then I'm worried about them. So we didn't open the pub that first Christmas, but we opened up for about maybe 30 or so people to come and have Christmas lunch. And it was a really motley looking crew of people. I mean, the Angel was a place where a guy with a 3-foot Mohican would stand next to a dude in a suit, or next to a lady out from the towny side of town on a Saturday night. Everybody just worked and coincided together. And this Christmas Day, that was community. That was my first part of thinking, actually, this is the power of community, because these people would be left by themselves to their own devices, worrying, wondering, and feeling the fear that actually no one really cares. And that's not good enough for me, because there's always somebody out there who cares. So that for me was the moment where I thought community is absolutely key. And everything that I've done since then has been built from that. And, I think back to time with Wagamama, I built a community of managers from within my brand, my teams and my businesses. And I always thought, I'm going to make my corner of the world the best it can be. It'll be great for Wagamama, but it'll be great for us and our team. So you build that community within the team, that sense of actually we're all connected, we belong here together. And once people start to feel that, then they start to feel stronger, they start to feel more empowered, and they start to feel like they can really start to make a difference. And then the impact, I don't need to be there to do that then. It's not about me. It's not about my raging ego. I have a raging ego. But it's not about that. It's about the people who are part of that community, lifting each other up and supporting one another. EXP was built to do that. It was built to connect. We made it our business to know every single person who was coming through our door. We may not have met them personally, but we made it our business to know who was coming through the door, what did they want to achieve from that event. How do we connect them to the next person who can potentially do something good for them? Otolo, it will be the single biggest global hospitality community that this industry has ever known. That's it. That's the objective. And I give my business partners the absolute fear when I start to talk about these things, because I start to talk about numbers. And at some point, I want 10 million people to belong in a hospitality community, because it's out there. They're waiting to be found, and they're waiting to kind of come together, and they want a place to come together. Social media does it for them, but is there a place where actually, as a hospitality specialist, I can go and ask a question and share knowledge and give of myself, and know that the people who are around it are going to benefit so much of that? Not so much. So we're building that, and we're going to make it happen. Community is key. That's just the reality of it. And anybody who's not open to that premise, and anybody who is not doing everything they possibly can do to help that flourish, is going to fall short. Our industry's struggling right now, and it's struggling because we've got people working in silos. Come together, one voice. Unity is going to be the thing that makes us very, very successful in the long term.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that video that you did around Christmas time, that's actually how we first connected in the first.
It was a bit of a rant.
Yeah, it was fantastic though. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. It sort of summed it up nicely, where it's sort of, we want to keep the great people in our sector. And so, the real enemy is going off to the other places like Amazon, like Uber, taxis and that kind of thing. And I thought it was summarized perfect. I'll actually link it in the notes, because I think it was pretty on point in terms of, we've got to make it so it's healthy competition as well.
For sure.
So
that's fun. That's fun, isn't it? I mean, I'm a twin. Everything from day one was a competition, so I like a bit of a battle. I auditioned for The Apprentice one year, a few years ago, and that was the first thing that I said in an audition. They were like, that's insane, but I like it. I'm so glad I never got near the show, because they're all maniacs. However, as a twin, that competitive element is always there. And I think, we can be competitive, but we can be so positive and so constructive with it. It doesn't have to be about knocking somebody else down. to say I'm going to flourish. It's about saying I'm going to do the very best I possibly can. You think about brands. My corner of the world in Wagamama was about making sure that my restaurant was the best it could be, number one. Then the second restaurant and the third best restaurant were all the best that they could be. It wasn't about saying that any other Wagamama was going to be horrendous, because that was not my goal. My goal was to make sure that when people thought about that brand, they thought good things. That's what we should do for hospitality. Hospitality is a brand that actually we need to do better at telling that story and sharing that vision about what it is, the true very best of it, whilst accepting the worst, because the worst exists.
Yeah, I think the expression "all ships go up in a rising tide" comes to mind. But can I just talk to you about mentorship for a moment? Because I mean, personally, I was fortunate. I went to hospitality college, and they've had facilities for that. But it's not something that's out there so much. I mean, it's something that you're very passionate about.
It's a fight.
But like for mentors and mentees, what does it actually look like in practice?
So I guess we had a chap who joined the program last October it was, and he 2 months in, got to about December, and he'd been through a really tough time. He'd lost his job and he was really struggling to know what he was going to do next. And happily, before that moment had come, he'd signed up to the program. He'd got himself a mentor. He'd been matched with somebody who can kind of give him what he needed, which was around leadership and development, were his specific elements. If he hadn't have had that mentor during that time, it could have gone really differently for him. We could have lost him, is a simple answer, to the industry. But because he had the mentor, because he had the person with him, talking to him, listening to him, and helping to kind of trigger the ways of thinking, the ways of working, and really just reminded him of what he loved about our industry, then he was persistent and he carried on with his search. And within 2 months, he was able to find himself a job that just brought absolute joy to his heart. If he hadn't have had the mentor, that might not have happened, because the reality was he was getting frustrated. He was feeling like, actually, being made redundant again. That's not easy. And you do have a moment when you get being made redundant 2, 3, 4 times. That's hard going on a person's soul. So having that mentor was really key for him. Now, the relationship was very simple, really. It was about kind of setting some really clear objectives, really having an honest conversation. And that's really the way mentoring works in the very best way possible, is being open and honest with the person that you're talking to. They don't always have the answers. If you come across a mentor who tells you they've got every answer to every problem you could ever deliver, run away and find a new one, because they're an absolute liar and they're going to do you no good. None of us have got all the answers all the time, but we have access to that information. We have access to that knowledge. And that's where you come back to the community element. That's if I've got a mentor who's got a challenge with their mentee, they don't have to try and work up the answer themselves. They can come and talk to us. They can go and talk to their fellow mentors, and they can kind of start to share it without giving details. They can kind of share the outline of the problem, and they'll start to really find a resolution to it. And that, for me, that's the power of it. It's kind of finding that moment where somebody feels like they're on the downs and they're on the outs and they're thinking, maybe this is not for me. Then having that relationship and just keep poking and keep asking the right questions, because mentoring finds that balance between, you walk a line between coaching and mentoring for me in our world. Coaching obviously is about asking the right questions to give people the opportunity to kind of come to the conclusion themselves. Mentoring is more about sharing that experience and sharing your knowledge and sharing that lived experience. For me, when I talk to somebody and talk about that lived experience of having been made redundant 2, 3 times, and they look at me and they go, actually, life's good. Life's good for you. And it's like, and it will be for you. You just need to make it so. Finding mentors who are comfortable to share that openly and honestly is really the key for me, because I just think in my world, it's very simple. If I've got something that can make your life a little bit better, if I've got an experience that can make your journey a little bit easier, why wouldn't I share it? And that's what I want to create. That's what we as a team are absolutely building. And, me or Chris are often the face of Otolo as mentors. But there are 14 people in our business who are in there every single day, matching, going through the program, delivering the sessions, listening to our mentees, making sure that they're matched with the right person. I had a young lady last week who said, I'm just not comfortable with the guy that I've been matched with. He's just not there. And I'm like, okay, we'll change that. We've got a safeguarding responsibility. So we changed that. We spoke to the chap. We had a conversation, solve it. Happy days. There's a whole collection of people within our team who they're so passionate about this and what it can give. And I guess the difference is, the way I look at it is, if I would have found a mentor when I was 21, how different would my life have been? Would I have achieved the same things? Yes. Would I have achieved them faster? Undoubtedly. Would my career have kind of gone in a different direction? Maybe. But it would have got where I wanted to be much faster, rather than a lot of it working out for myself.
That's the interesting thing, because surely it broadens your perspectives. You find out things that you wouldn't have otherwise known about.
For sure.
Opportunities that come about, and it kind of expands there.
Well, if you think that you come across people who've got utterly different lived life experience, again, council estate kid, came from nothing, bit of a chip on my shoulder. If I come across somebody who hasn't necessarily lived that life, but has lived a tough life in their own way, and they can share that experience, that forces me to think. I had a moment myself where I was speaking at a school for Springboard, and I used to speak at the toughest schools, the hardest schools, where these kids I knew that didn't have much in the way of opportunity. And one day they sent me to a school in Cambridgeshire, and I drove up to this school, and it was beautiful. I looked at it as I drove up, and the ornate fencing that travelled around this 3-acre piece of land that this private school was on was worth more than my home that I live in, that I'm very happy with. And I was like, this is not the school for me. And I was like, I'm here now, so I'm going to go and do it. So I was dealing with these kids, and they were having the same challenges, just different. So one young lady, she was talking about what she was going to do with her life, and she was going to be a banker. And when she spoke about being a banker, she went very serious, and she was very focused, and was very deliberate. I will be a banker. And we got to talk about what it is that makes her smile. What does she do in her spare time? She talked about filmmaking, and then difference. The moment when she started to speak about the filmmaking that she does in her spare time, it's like, boom, somebody flicked a switch, and just she lit up like an absolute Christmas tree, and there was joy in her face. And I was looking at her and thinking, she has the same pressure. The pressure for me was to get a job and to try and be useful. The pressure for her is to get a very specific career and go and be incredibly good at it, because 2 generations before her had done that. Did she want to be a banker? No. Did she want to be a filmmaker? God, yes. When she spoke about it, it was just like, boom. Yeah. I was like, that smile is incredible. So having that moment where she's able to talk and listen as I'm talking to her, and helping her to see that a little bit, her parents probably didn't appreciate me for this, but a little bit that actually you don't have to do that just because 2 generations gone before you've said it is what you do. This is the thing that really makes you smile. That little trigger moment where she's able to look and see, well, actually that's possible. That's hugely impactful. And that's that idea of broadening that horizon and broadening that picture. In her world, she'd done a huge amount of things. She'd lived a really nice life. She'd holidays all over the place. Life was good. But still the horizon was quite small because that's the expectation. So helping her to see that the horizons can be much bigger, hugely powerful. And it's actually one of the things that I'm proudest of.
Values can help with getting to a position where people have an aligned way of operating, I guess. And it gives that autonomy to do, to free flow, like what you're saying, where you sort of started changing things around the store and started doing things slightly differently. And it's sort of, if everyone is operating aligned to those values, it basically, you get more empowerment and being able to do kind of more in your role and what you do in your day-to-day.
So I'm a huge fan of David Marquette, Turn the Ship Around. And in David Marquette, Turn the Ship Around, he took on a Navy sub. He'd spent 18 months, I think it was, learning how to go and captain this Navy sub. And 6 months towards the end of his training, they said, that sub's not ready. You're going to have to go and do a different one. And he was like, cool, okay. Similar though. And they were like, yeah, similar in the fact that it's a submarine. The one he was going to was a nuclear submarine. He'd not planned to go and lead a nuclear submarine. And he spent a lot of time working out that in the Navy, you have to be the person who knows the answer. You have to be the person who gives the order to get something done. Starbucks' whole no foam triple fat latte macchiato, whatever, comes from the Navy. It comes from that world where I give you an order, you repeat the order, and then you do the order. Amazing. He learned really quickly that he didn't have all the information to be able to give good orders. So he came to a conclusion that he was going to push authority to the point of information. And if you do that well, and in my world, in restaurant world, it happens at different places. So when it comes to on a busy Saturday night when I've got a host who's in control of the door, they've got the authority to make the decision about who comes in, when and where. Otherwise, I'm going to come in with my big size 9s thinking I've got the answer because I'm the most experienced person in the building. I'm not. I might be the most experienced person in the building, but I'm not the best person to give the answer at that point. So pushing the authority to them is really key. Pushing the authority to a line chef to know that actually, if an ingredient's not quite right, if something's not what it should be, if he's made a dish and it's not exactly what you would hope it is, and he wouldn't put it in front of his dish. And the rule I always just say with my line chefs is, if you wouldn't put that up on the pass and be happy that was going to go and get served to your mum and it was going to make her happy, do not attempt to serve it to any of our guests. Because it's got to be the best. So I need to be able to sure that I can push that authority to that line chef to say, no, that's not perfect. So I'm going to make it again. It's going to take a little bit longer, but I'm going to do it again. Can you go and speak to the guest? If you do that, then you get a collection of people who actually are taking responsibility, taking accountability, knowing full well that they feel valued, knowing full well that they feel trusted, most importantly, knowing that they feel heard and that they are seen. That's what we want. That's one of the basic things in life that we all want in our world. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we want to be trusted. If you can give them that, then by God, could you imagine how successful your business would be? For me, it was just, I was known as the king of delegation. I had an area manager who would say, I've never known anybody delegate as much as you, but still deliver. And I'm like, you don't need me to do the job. You just need me to create the space for these amazing people to do what they do really, really well. And then if there's a problem, I'll be the one that goes and finds out where the grit in the work is and just remove that. That's what I'm going to bring to the table. These folks, they're going to go and smash it. I was a really average restaurant manager. I was a very good people leader. That was the difference. And when people used to say, what do you do? What's your job? My mum would be sitting there going, he's a restaurant manager. And she was so proud. He's like, really, he's a restaurant. I was like, Mum, I'm not a restaurant manager. I just lead people. That's it. That's what we need to do as leaders in any business, if I'm honest with you. Stop thinking about the technicality of your job and start thinking about the fact that the people around you that you've engaged, that you've brought in, that you've recruited, you're going to give them the opportunity. If you do that, and you give them the best chance possible to be successful, there's a really good chance they're going to do that. They're going to be happy, they're going to be engaged, they're going to be smiley, and then your guests are going to feel the benefit of it, and it will just pay forward and forward and forward. That's powerful.
That is very, that's flipping the priority of going, like one of the things is going, if you focus on your team, put your team first, so the happy people, happy service, happy customer, as opposed to the, traditionally it's the other way around, where it's like you get kicked if you get it slightly wrong with the customer's always right. All those kind of core principles which we're taught very early about hospitality, and it is right to an extent, but at the same time you've got to make sure your people are empowered and focused to deliver the quality of service that they can to their maximum potential. I
remember getting into an argument in a job interview once. Didn't get the job, but I remember getting into an argument with a job interviewer, and he had this thing where he would say, what's most important, great food or great service? Clearly it's great service. I mean, food is good, and that's the thing that'll make you smile, but service is the thing that makes you come back every single time. And we agreed on that. That was groovy. And then he said, what's the most important, guest or team? And I was like, team, every time. And there was a moment where he looked at me and he was like, are you sure that's what the answer you want to give? And I'm like, I'm ready to, let's discuss it then if you want, because I'm ready to do this. Yeah. We had 15 minutes of just really digging into that. And I was just like, how can you possibly say that the guest is the most important in the building? Like in the long term, yes, without them, we are nothing. But the reality is, without a team that is really engaged and hasn't got that 50 pence in the meter, and that is such a reference for the kids. I really do find that I date myself at moments when you talk about that, but that 50 pence in the meter that just drives you forward and moves you and keeps you doing good stuff, we all need that. And without those people in our businesses doing that, our guests aren't coming back anyway. So engage your time, energy, and effort in making sure that your team are happy, making sure that your team are smiling. They're not always going to love everything that you do, every decision you make. There have been moments where I remember I was chatting about this actually with one of my mentees who's known me for a long time. And there was a spell where I was nicknamed Napoleon because I had a really clear idea about what I wanted. And I was relentless with it, to be honest with you. The standard was the standard. And I was called Napoleon as this insulting nickname. And I was like, why is that insulting? Man was a strategist. Yes, he had some issues around his height, but he was an incredible strategist. He was absolutely born to do and achieve his goal. And they were just, so why is that an insult? And the lass who started the nickname, she was like, that's disappointing. I really hoped it was going to hurt you. I was like, yeah, if you want to hurt me, there's ways you can do it. But
that's so malicious.
It really is. You talk about culture. That was an exercise in kind of culture and toxic culture that really does need tweaking and changing and takes time and energy to do. But for me, it was just enabling those people. Just enabling people. That's it. That's the answer. Enable your people to go and do amazing things. Get out of the way, let them do it. And when they make a mistake, be there to lift them up, support them, and show them how they could have learned from that experience. It's not complicated.
Yeah, the lessons learned and carrying it forwards. So what do you feel are the biggest challenges at the moment in the hospitality sector from your perspective?
I mean, I've got to get a train at some point, so I'm not going to try and list them all off, because I'll be honest, there's a lot right now. And I guess the reality is, I think the biggest challenge right now is for those operators to stay resilient, to stay resourceful, because it feels like we're in a storm, a perfect storm. Energy costs are absolutely destroying us. Everybody I've spoken to in the last sort of week or so has had their energy bills, their personal energy bills have been a bit like, oh my God, that's insane. And I'm like, okay, well now just go and take a minute and think about the restaurant who's getting their energy bills and thinking, I haven't been lucky enough to have my numbers set. So they are literally at the will of the market. So that's huge. And that is a thing that draws the life from you, because it's just any entrepreneur, when you're building a business, you start to think about, what can I do to make sure that my people have a good experience and a good opportunity to do well? And all of the really dull stuff, the horrible stuff, you try to keep it away from them. But those costs are a massive thing, and they will drain from a person. And I see it. I was chatting with somebody on Twitter on Sunday, and he was talking about the fact that in his business, he'd put his roast up to £28, and he was worried that people were going to question him for it. Insane. I mean, it's a Sunday roast in a really nice country pub. Why would anybody be questioning that? But people do, because the challenge of ensuring that the public understand the value of food, just basic food costs in this country, it's insane. I mean, I don't know what we've done in the last 20 years, but we seem to have educated people to just really have a bad idea about the cost of literally putting something on a plate. Costs are a challenge. VAT is a challenge. We've got UK hospitality battling with the government to reduce VAT. I'm not going to go on a political rant, because you don't get paid for that. And that's probably one for the pub. But this government needs to do more for this industry. It is one of the biggest, it's the third biggest employer in the country. We are losing businesses at a rate of knots right now, because costs are absolutely spiraling out of control. And VAT is one of those things that they could do really quickly that would make life easier. Your man who's put his roast up to £28, he's getting 22 quid off that straight away. He's got £6 going to the government. Nobody's thinking about that, because I go to Tesco's and I buy my food and I'm like, well, it's cheaper. Well, it's cheaper because it's VAT-free. That's the simple answer. But people don't think. So, biggest challenges. Costs, I think that, spiraling costs.
Yeah, and with those challenges, I mean, businesses are having to make pretty drastic changes. I mean, as you say, some are going out of business, which is devastating. And whether it's the external impacts that are causing businesses to have to make those changes, or whether it's internal direction changes, I think you've done it yourself, where going to a business like Otolo, and you've whether it's a directional shift or changing the way the team operates. I mean, what's your advice to managing that change?
Transparency. Be transparent in your decision making. Just be open, be honest. Why are you doing something? What's the reason for it? Really, before you make that step, before you take any step forward, do the thinking, do the work, and understand, is it actually a good decision to make? And is it the thing that's going to be best for the business? Yes, it might be painful. You're going to have to make some tough choices in the short term. But if you're transparent with people about that, and you're really open and honest, and do it and display your messaging with empathy. The reality is, life is hard for everybody. And yes, in any business that you've got to make changes like that, it's hard for the founder and it's hard for the leaders. Of course it is. But it's to get caught up in that you're the only one feeling the pain right now, that's where you're going to go wrong. So understand that everybody else is feeling the pain. Be open and honest about the reasoning as to why you're making changes, and whether that is structural changes, procedural changes, whether that is just, I've got to let some people go because this business cannot sustain in the entirety for everybody, so somebody's going to have to go. And I've been in the past where I've taken on restaurants that have been absolutely on the backside, and you've got to make tough choices, and it's not an easy thing by any stretch, and it's not comfortable, and no one feels good going and telling somebody that their job doesn't exist anymore. No one feels good doing that. If you do, you're a terrible person. You probably don't belong in hospitality. But knowing when to make those tough choices. And if I'm honest with you, making them at the right time, don't delay. Procrastination is not your friend at this point. You've got to be, it's not about being aggressive, but it's about being really proactive and addressing what needs to change. Understand that. Easiest way to do that, if I'm honest with you, is by talking to the people within the business, listening to them, paying attention to what they tell you, creating that environment where they feel comfortable to come and share with you. Not an easy thing for all of us, to be fair, but I think actually just asking lots of questions, genuinely listening to the answers and demonstrating that you're listening.
Well, that point about kind of informing that culture, because that doesn't happen overnight. So being very transparent and giving that logic and reasoning and being able to communicate that effectively, that will encourage others to start speaking out a bit more, and you'll get to the truth of the matter.
Without doubt. Without doubt. And I think if you can create that environment where everybody starts to feel like they've got a voice that can be heard and they've got something to add to the conversation, the real joy of that is, if you do it well, then some of your best ideas to actually how we're going to turn this business around or how we're going to shift the culture will come from within, because they're the people living and breathing on a daily basis. And if you leave your ego at the door and think, well, actually, I don't have every answer, and that's, for me, is probably the starting point of every conversation, is your ego is not going to help in this conversation. That's it. So pop it at the door, leave it for a rainy day and come back to it when you need it. We don't really ever need it, but you never know. There's a time and a place. Leave your ego at the door, ask your team the right questions, listen to the answers that they give you. Just listen and really show that you're actually paying attention. There's nothing worse than when you sit and give somebody half an hour of your life and you walk away from that thinking they paid no heed to that at all. And if I asked them tomorrow what we talked about, they really couldn't give me the answers. That's just like, why would I waste my time?
Talking about, you've moved from being the hospitality operator to, and then looking to the support roles. And there's all these support roles around hospitality, and often people who work within the sector then go out to them. I mean, I'm an example of that as well. It's technology, but you go into recruitment or community building. I mean, it's all there. What was the logic behind that for you? Or
for me personally?
Yeah, for you personally.
It's a couple of things, really. I've got the knees of a 90-year-old. So physically, I'm not built for it anymore, restaurant operations. For me, it was genuine. So for me, it was very simple. It was actually about, how do I do the most good for this industry that I love? That's it. And without being a raging egomaniac, I know full well that the job that I do now, the role that I play now, has an impact on the wider industry, not just on that small corner of the world. The skills I developed were developed in that world, and making sure that small corner of the world was amazing. Being able to put those skills to work to make the industry a better place for every single person within it, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
When I look at the wider ecosystem, one of the reasons why tech brands sometimes struggle going in to be embedded into operations is because they don't really know how to communicate. You get tech folks who speak one language and operators who've got a level of cynicism and speak a very different language, and sometimes those two things don't work. So if people from operations can go into the tech world and help to embed that tech that's going to make that operational life much easier, that's a really powerful thing as well. So I think having taken those skills that we build and taking those things that the traits that we develop, the character traits that we kind of accentuate, if we can put those into the wider world, into that ecosystem, then why wouldn't we?
Yeah, it's a more scalable impact, that's for sure.
The world changes as well, we're in chapters of careers now. Nobody stays in one job anymore. It's never going to exist. It's gone. It's over. So we get chapters of books. So let's just make sure that our chapter, if I get a young person who's 20 and I get 2 chapters of their book with me, then I'm just going to make them the most fun-filled. I'm going to make them most positive. I'm going to make them most lessons. If they write that book down, I'm going to make sure that's the 2 chapters that they're able to share the most learning from. If we can do that, we're winning.
Yeah. Where are you seeing what innovations are you seeing come through into the market?
So one of our little babies, Tech on Toast, as we look at how technology is able to influence and impact hospitality. And I'm a bit of a cynic, or have been a cynic about the way technology could be and should be adapted into hospitality operations. However, within that world, we've been looking at robots, the introduction of robots. And I genuinely, there was a point in my life, if you made that suggestion to me, I would have slapped you in the head and told you, stop being silly. There's no place for a robot in a service experience. It just doesn't exist. I was wrong, is a simple answer. There really is. So technology, when done well and when implemented well, it takes away the grind of the really average and dull bits of the jobs. So we employ these amazing people on the front of house. We employ these amazing people who've got great personalities, great characters, and then we get them to do really mundane jobs that actually really isn't that purposeful. So why wouldn't I take away the mundane task, create an opportunity where a robot can just come around, do its thing, pick up the dirty plates, bring out fresh food, but actually the person who kind of connects with that team, with that guest, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about this. And that moment where they make that connection, that becomes incredibly powerful then. So I think it's technology. We're going to look at hybrids, hybrid experiences. That's the world. And that's how it's going to work really, really effectively. Technology, when done well and embedded well, but working in hybrid with an amazing member of a team, putting those two things together, then it gets exciting. Then it gets really exciting because actually, there's going to be some cost cutting because a robot will just do its thing over again and again and again and again. It's never going to come and argue. It's just going to get the job done. But just think about that team member who doesn't have to spend time clearing plates, doesn't have to spend time doing the mundane tasks. They just get to connect. That's powerful.
Yeah, well, their role will evolve to be
Hugely.
more impactful and be more people-facing, which... Because it's hospitality, you can never take people out of hospitality.
Impossible.
It's just, but the mundane task for sure, that is undoubtedly a thing. I'd love to do an exercise with you, which is around start, stop, continue. Okay. So, things you'd like the sector to start doing, stop doing, and continue. And I know you've prepared some thoughts on this one. So, it'd be fantastic to get your take on this.
Well, start is go hybrid. Stop mucking around. Don't be like me. Don't be sitting there thinking that there's no place for this. Open your mind up to the fact that hybrid are using technology and people, putting those two things together, you will deliver amazing experiences for your guests. It's just a fact. There is no argument about it now. So start that. Stop. Gut instinct. As an operator, I used to work a lot on gut instinct. And I always kind of thought that actually that will give me the best answer. That will give me the best solution. But actually, no, it didn't. Once I started marrying up gut instinct with data, then I became really quite powerful. And I remember listening to Vic Searle from Data Hawk talk, and she talks a lot about leaving money on the table. And she's absolutely right. If you're not utilizing your data effectively within your restaurant, you are leaving money on the table. So every opportunity you get to engage with your guest, with your customer, you've got to be taking it. So before they even come through the door, utilizing data effectively to be able to think, right, what is important to this person? How do I communicate through email? It's Mother's Day coming up. Mother's Day can be hard for some people. I lost my mum 4 years ago. The first year after, when I got an email that said, do you want to opt out of Mother's Day emails? I was like, yeah, that would be really cool. I don't want that all the time. It would be nice. What I'd really like, though, is for that company to log that information and say, Kieron said he doesn't want that now, so we're not going to send it. And if at some point he changes his mind and he wants to go back to hearing about Mother's Day, he'll tell us when he's ready. But we're going to assume that he's told us he doesn't want to hear about it because it makes him sad. That's the evolution of data. And if we can get more brands doing that, then actually get the operators to put that together and say, well, actually, how powerful do I become? If I've got that innate built gut instinct that tells me how I can, all of my experience and all of my knowledge, but I party that up with the data, then I just become dangerous in a really, really good way. So that idea of not leaving money on the table, it's so important. The reality is the world's hard right now. So you've got to take every opportunity you can. So whether it's talking to them before they even think about coming through the door or talking to them once they've left, use that data to be able to help to do that. Continue to just deliver and just look at your guests and think, what do they want? What do they need? What do they want from us? What's going to make them smile? I've started writing a book, and it's around the idea of making memories, not memes. And I think we get the chance every day to make memories with people. And that's a really powerful thing. We get the opportunity where somebody gives that moment of their life, that part of their life to us and says, please do something good with it. Whether it's Costa, whether it's casual dining, whether it's a fine dining experience, I'm giving you that responsibility. So continue to look for the chances to blow that away. Continue to look for the opportunities to make that magnificent. Continue. Okay. Continue with that.
Yeah, for sure. Perfect. And now just to move into the last three questions that we normally ask our guests, it's going to more the personal side, stepping to the other side of the bar.
Cool.
As a customer. What advice or what is it you see that hospitality businesses get wrong? They don't do it right, and that the advice you give them to start, to change it up and do it right.
For me, it's the simple things right now. Getting that customer, getting that guest to step over the threshold is tougher than it's ever been. They've got choices. They've got choices about how they're going to spend that money. So once somebody's made that decision to step in your door, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to look up? Are you going to make eye contact? For sure. If you're not, do better. Are you going to be the first person that speaks? And are you going to be the one that breaks the ice? If you're not, do better. Are you going to be the person that gives them a reason to come and sit down and come and enjoy and come and spend their time with you? And more importantly, for you right now, in a world when your electricity bills and your energy bills are going to the roof, they're going to give you some money. So look up and do the simple things really, really well. Hospitality in itself is a really simple thing. It's just making people smile. So take the opportunities when they come. Once somebody steps over the threshold, draw them in. Once somebody's looked at you, made eye contact with you, be the first person to speak. And then be the person that gives them a reason to sit, stay, and most importantly, to come back. If you do all of those things, you will win. That's a fact. You will win.
We're going back to those hardcore interpersonal skills.
One of the things that's made me saddest this year is there was a great book released called Unreasonable Hospitality. And it makes me sad because I didn't think of the title. Unreasonable hospitality. What is the moment? What are those opportunities where I get to just do something more, something unexpected, something that is just outstanding? Saddens me that I didn't come up with that title.
Yeah, that's great. That book, is that the one from 11 Madison Avenue?
Yes.
Where he went out and got a hot dog overheard one of his guests, and it's a Michelin-star restaurant, and he came back with a New York dirty.
Yeah, they wanted that hot dog stand, dirty hot dog, gives it to his chef and says, "Chef, serve that for me." Chef, Michelin star chef, looking at him, "Mate, come on." And he's like, "Unreasonable hospitality." That's how we win. When you've got those moments and those little bits of language, shared language, that I can just remind you, this is about unreasonable hospitality. Okay, cool. I'm going to serve the hot dog. That person, it blows them away. And I mean, Will is just... He's a very smart man and he's been hugely successful in his restaurant world, and it makes sense that the book would be what it is. And if you haven't read it in hospitality, get on it. Everybody talks about Danny's setting the table. That was great. Will's Unreasonable Hospitality. That's the future.
Yeah, I'm going to check it out for sure. I've seen the TED Talk, which is fantastic.
He's an amazing dude.
He's a great guy. Talking to your younger self, so what you know now, what advice would you give yourself starting out again?
Find a mentor sooner rather than later. They're not just for senior people. They're not just for the more experienced people. They're not just for the CEOs and C-suites who or the people who are on that track. They're for everyone. You can find a mentor that will help you get you to where you want to go next. You may not know, but they'll be the compass that can help you to work out. So if I would have known that, if somebody would have said that to me at 19, 20, it worries me what I could have achieved at a much earlier age. I could have done amazing things. I did good things. I could have done amazing things. I'm old now, but there's another generation of people coming through who, if they go and seek it out from day one, from that early point of their career, that will be the compass that will help them to guide where they go next. And that's powerful stuff.
Well, it's about making that accessible as well. And which brings me into the next question. What's next for you?
What is next for me? I reckon I've got another 6 months of being absolutely buried deep in the world of Otolo. Like I say, we've got an amazing team who are just working so hard to deliver this program, and it's something that I'm really, really proud of, to be honest with you. They are a collection of people, and I probably don't tell them this enough, to be fair, because you get caught up in the day-to-day grind of it. But when I take a step back and I actually think about what they're achieving and the difference they're making to individuals' lives, I'm really, really proud of it. So keep delivering that, keep delivering against the grants, But for me now, it's about growing that further and further apart afield. So we are going to start stretching out our we're going to start stretching out our mentoring program UK wide. We have mentees and mentors kind of all across the globe already, but I really want to kind of dominate in the UK first. I want every person who works in hospitality to have the opportunity to get this and to have this, because there are some astounding people that I've met throughout my career. And we get young people who are sort of 17 to 23. The science says psychologically, we're not formed as adults until we get to 23. So we get those people at that age and we get to form them as not only as human beings, but as actually what they're going to do for the world, what they're going to do for the industry, and what they're going to do for their careers. So if you're at that point in your life, seek it, do more, find that opportunity, and go and get on board with it. For me, I'm just going to tell that story as far and wide and as loudly as I possibly can do. And I'm going to engage as many people in that goal as I possibly can, because it will make a difference to your life. So we're going to stretch that. Otolo will become the biggest global hospitality community. That's just it. I think there are two schools of thought when it comes to big, hairy, audacious goals. There's the one that says once you put it out there, that psychologically you've accepted it and you're kind of there, and then you start to lose that fight. Or there's the school of thought that says once you put it out there, you're being held to account. I believe in putting it out there and being held to account. So we will drive and we will work harder and longer than anybody else could do. That's it. That's what my team will do. That is what our team does. And as 4 founders, I'm sitting here talking about Otolo now, but there's Chris, there's Nick, and there's Ian. 4 more driven people you've never met in your life, driven to create this wonderfully inclusive environment where people get to be the very favourite version of themselves. Not the best version, the favourite version, because that's the one that makes you smile.
And that's a fantastic worthy cause, and I think that's a perfect place to close. So, Kieron, I'm very grateful for you coming onto this podcast, and thank you very much for your time.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Kieron. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed my discussion with Kieron, and I apologise if I offended anyone with the reference to hardcore interpersonal skills. But I hope you've really enjoyed this. If you've got ideas that you want to share, or want to get on the podcast, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Contact details we'll share in the show notes. But this has been the Recipes for Success podcast. Thank you for listening.